You're listening to Neurodivergent Mates. Hello and welcome to another episode of Neurodivergent Mates. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Aaron St. James. What's going on, brother?
Not much. I'm pretty keen to dig into some juicy topics.
Some juicy topics. We were just talking about you getting ready to move shortly, my man.
Yes. Never an exciting thing or something to look forward to, but it's got to be done. So
Yeah. I got to admit, moving sucks, man. I saw someone moving into like the apartment. Actually, we got our rent had been put up. And like I always get worried. I'm like, oh my God, they're putting it. Yeah. But they only put it up by $10. So I was like, you know what I mean? That's not too bad. When it's like $250, that's when it's like, holy crap, man. That's when you start to freak out. But no, all cool. Well, I wish you the best of luck with your move, yeah?
Thank you. I'm going to need all the luck I can get.
Did you want to plug that you might have some furniture up for grabs shortly?
I've gotten rid of the stuff that I don't need to. Yeah, I'm good. But yeah.
Okay, so you're good. So all right, man. I'm just trying to help out where I can, you know. But I tell you what, right? We've got a really cool topic that we're going to be covering today. So accommodations versus universal design for learning. So really cool topic there. But before we do get stuck in anything, I might just do a little bit of housekeeping for anyone who hasn't already done so. So if you haven't already done so, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media platforms. We're available on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And please check us out wherever you listen to your podcast. Please check us out, like us, subscribe to us, rate us, write comments to do or to help us to be able to, work in with that algorithm there. Now, just a big shout out to Neurodiversity Academy, our sponsor. We're doing some awesome stuff over at Neurodiversity Academy. So if you haven't already checked out what we're doing, please go to neurodiversityacademy.com. Also, too, warning, some discussions may be triggering. If you need help, please reach out to a loved one or call emergency services. We are not doctors. This is a space for sharing experiences and or strategies. Also, if you've got any questions during the podcast today, please chuck them in the comment section of wherever you're watching this live. So if you're watching this through Facebook Live or you're watching it through LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, whichever one you're watching it on, please feel free to ask us some questions. And if it's while we are live, we will try to answer them as best as we can. Aaron, you ready, my man?
I am ready to rumble.
Awesome. All right, cool. So we might just start off with a pretty basic one today. So look, share us a little bit about yourself. I obviously know a lot about you, but share with our listeners a little bit about who you are.
Hey, everyone. So my name's Aaron St. James. A little bit about me to set the scene. So I'm a mature age student. I'm also queer. I'm neurodivergent. So I've got ADHD and dyslexia, potential some autistic symptoms, but not enough to get fully diagnosed because I'm quite good at communicating and I'm quite an extrovert at times. So my psychiatrist is like, that does not, you don't fit the mold for that. So we'll see later on. I also have a physical disability and I want to get into like what disability is and like what it encompasses, because I think it's just more than the physical aspects. Like you can't see my physical disability because I have a back injury and I have chronic pain. So yeah, I want to kind of elaborate more on like what disability is and how it's kind of changed, or the perception or the understanding of disability has changed over time as people have become more aware that like invisible disabilities are a form of disability too, and we have to recognize that. Like I have chronic health conditions such as chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and chronic pain, which unfortunately comes from I guess, the injury that I had and the compounding stress of being a mature age student at starting uni at 30 after being a chef for over 10 years. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
I didn't know you were a chef, man. Whereabouts were you a chef?
I've been a chef for a few places. I used to do corporate catering in Barangaroo. I used to work for a catering company, which we did catering on like super yachts. Worked at venues like Gucci and Ferrari and stuff. It was pretty sick. That last role was where I hurt my back, so I'm not
spewing, man, spewing. I heard that like in the hospitality sector, I was only thinking about the other day, you know everyone, right? Why is that? How do you just know everyone? It seems like everyone I know who works in hospitality knows everyone.
It's like living in like a country town where like everybody just knows everybody's business, I guess, because there's like circuits. There's like the catering circuit. There's like the restaurant circuit. There's like just different circuits, and I guess there's like hiring companies and stuff. So like you just kind of, I don't know. I used to work at Fox Studios too, which was pretty exciting because I think Chris Hemsworth was there once when they were filming one of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and like some of those chefs like catered at like the Olympics and stuff like that. So it's just like, yeah, it's hard to explain, but there's, I guess, yeah, little just circuits and like pockets and cliques that they have within the hospitality business.
And do you know what I sort of learned as well, especially when I was doing a little bit of hospitality when I was overseas, on your days off, you know, the hospitality people really know how to party. What do you reckon?
Yes, it's full of alcohol and other substance abuse.
Anyway, we'll save that one for another podcast, eh? Nice. But yeah, no, that's interesting. I never knew. I didn't realize you were a chef. So you cook up some pretty awesome meals still, or you're just like, yeah.
I can cook, and I do love cooking, but I actually love like styling and designing food more than cooking it itself. I think my ADHD likes, the design part, and like it's really like I love focusing and making things look really like neat and tidy. And because I've got IBS and other health conditions, like I can't cook the foods that I like to eat.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like a kind of dairy, kind of gluten, kind of a lot of things. So it's just like my cooking range is kind of limited. So it's just kind of made cooking a bit
boring,
not as fun anymore. But yeah.
Anyway, I suppose these things happen for a reason, and you're moving on to bigger and better things. Yeah. So, you know, I obviously first met you through, you know, your program through UNSW. About, what was that, 2 years ago or 3 years ago? I can't remember. Might have been even longer than that. 2022
or 2023, I think. Yeah, so 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah. I think I was still living at Ryde then. I can't remember. But you know, and I suppose the big thing that we first really started talking about was neurodiversity, what's happening in, you know, vocational education and in higher ed as well. So, you know, you're doing a fair bit of stuff there at UNSW. But look, tell us a little bit about the work that you actually are doing.
Okay, so I was diagnosed at 27. I'm currently 34. So I started uni at 30 in 2020. And in my second year in, my best friend, actually, she was a co-founder of the Diversified Project, which I am the student lead and actual research officer for. And through that project, it all started off with my friend. She got like an assessment brief, for one of her like design assessments that she didn't find accessible, so she didn't know how to like process it properly. But as a design student, rather than just saying that was an issue, she was like, well, why don't I just redesign it and then see what the professor thinks? And he fucking loved it. And then outside of university, my friend Josie and I were just like, why do we feel like we're dumb and like we're broken, and that like in a higher education system we feel like we're like not good enough? And when we're intelligent people and we've got a lot going for us, but in this system we just feel like we're not, it's not meant for us. So with those conversations happening, and then Josie going to her professor, we ended up getting a seed funding grant to start the Diversified project. And initially that started off like more student kind of side, where we took a whole bunch of neurodivergent students' problems within their courses, and through a series of workshops, which we used like co-design and co-production. So we were working with students, academics, and staff. Majority of them identified as neurodivergent, not all of them. But we created a set of solutions to the problems that the students are facing in their courses. And then we created a set of recommendations, which we proposed to the university. Then we got more funding, and we went into the second phase, which is we've created an inclusive education toolkit. This is more academic facing. So now it's like we know what the students, we know what some of the students' issues are. Like we can never find out all the issues, but a lot of them overlap. And now we've gone on to the academic side of things, where it's like, okay, well, we know students are facing X issues. Like, let's try and solve them by creating an inclusive education toolkit, which can help academics kind of understand student experience. And we've got 5 key themes, which has like it's quite basic, but it's quite comprehensive at the same time, because it's like multifaceted toolkit. But it's basic in the sense that like I work within accessibility and inclusion. So for me, these should be standard things. And any education-focused academic or like teaching staff should be doing some of the things that we've got in our checklist. Like some people might be like, this is just very basic and I'm already doing these things, so why bother? But like we want to get the academics who don't know anything about neurodiversity, neuroinclusion, or making the education system more accessible. And we want to try to bring them in as much as possible, because they're the ones that need, like we need to help change their mindsets, raise awareness. We need to help educate them. We need to make accessibility and inclusion accessible for them, so they understand the importance of it. If I go back on a little tangent halfway through this, I actually met Will through, we had like a side project called Storybox. So the Diversified project collaborated with the Storybox, which is run through like SM projects, ESEM projects. And what we did within this like tangent project was we took neurodivergent people's experiences of how they navigated like the outside world, or the outside environment, and we kind of digitalized their stories into like artwork or like digital media, and then we showcase them on this kind of cool digital cube, which is called the Storybox, which was really interesting because like we're raising awareness and providing an understanding of how neurodivergent people navigate the world, but it's in a public space, which it's quite powerful and impactful when like you're watching this like 3-dimensional cube, like with 4 screens kind of sharing people's experiences in a public setting. It's like, it was quite a cool project. I even had my mum come along because my mum's neurodivergent, and it was pretty cool stuff just to see that like something like neurodiversity and neurodivergent people's experiences was publicly displayed, and people are slowly becoming more aware. I guess also through social media, like neurodiversity is trending, and there's a lot of like, how to get diagnosed with ADHD, how to manage symptoms, like all this stuff. But like yeah, this was just like people's real raw emotions and their experiences of the struggles they face when navigating challenging environments. And yeah, it was
It's
really good.
definitely interesting when you can see it in pictures, correct?
Mm,
I think that was the thing that I took away from it.
yeah, like seeing someone's story, like whether it's like just a series of pictures or like a digital kind of animation or just like someone's photo with words behind it. It's so powerful, and there was so many cool stories, and yeah, just it was really
Yeah,
cool.
crazy. The good old days, eh?
Yeah.
No, cool. But look, getting into, what we were coming to talk about today. So like we said before we started, we're going to cover like accommodations versus universal design of learning. So what I did want to start with was the first question here: proactive versus reactive, rethinking inclusion in higher education. What's your thoughts based around that? Now, you did say a little bit like, we've got toolkits and trying to get not necessarily the people who already know about neurodiversity, but the people who don't know about neurodiversity is going to be crucial in really creating this environment, not just that where you study, but, Australia-wide, worldwide, all of that type of stuff. What is your thoughts on that? Because obviously there still is a real big gap, but, we are getting closer than what we were.
Things are definitely progressing. I think like inclusion should be proactive. It definitely shouldn't be reactive. I think in some cases it is reactive because there are like certain like the Disability Discrimination Act and other education acts that kind of force education systems to kind of meet certain compliance levels, which, to be honest, like this is just my opinion, but I don't think they're living up to those standards. And I think that like accommodations, they can often fix barriers after the fact, but UDL kind of anticipates diverse needs like from the start, which reduces the reliance on accommodations. So like I always think of it as like accommodations, they kind of even the playing field somewhat, but it's like this is a neurotypical level and this is a neurodivergent level. And when you get accommodations, you're still like not to the same level, but like you are getting an accommodation could be, for example, like as a third year molecular biology student coming from a low SES background, like I didn't finish year 12. I didn't have much of a positive education experience because of my dyslexia and undiagnosed ADHD. Like I was always told, like, if you just applied yourself, you would be really good at this. And it's just like, it's like I get for every hour of like an exam, for example, like I get an extra hour. And some people might be like, that's like way too much. Like, why do you get that? But it's like I process things. I'm very intelligent, but I process things in a much slower pace than your average person.
Do you find that hour actually does work?
It does. Like, it doesn't get me like HDs all the time. But like it does help me understand questions, for example, because I think most of the time, like you spend more time deciphering what the question is than actually like finding out the answer, which is stupid because it's like if the question is not accessible, like how do you expect a student to be able to function efficiently in an environment to get the best grades when like the answers aren't actually the issue, it's the questions in the first place.
So you're finding that the questions are a big problem for you a lot of the time, just out of curiosity?
And not just me. I know a lot of students who kind of just like, they spend a lot of time deciphering the questions rather than like.
Oh, yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's why I sort of was like, is this something, because I have heard it not only just say in university, but in vocational education as well. And I think from what the feedback I've got from people is that the people writing these things, sometimes they're not even coming from the background of like the topic that's the questions are being written from, if that makes sense. They're not, say if it's about, I don't know, bloody science, they're not science people who are writing those questions, if that makes sense.
I can't speak towards the vocational sector, but I think within higher education, you would have more like science people focusing on science questions.
Okay.
But I heard this good explanation of like dyslexia the other day. It's like, imagine you're learning Chinese for the first time, but then putting that into perspective, you're answering questions in an exam for the first time because you've never seen these questions before. Because every practice exam you have, it's like the questions are never the same and they're never worded the same either. Or if it's in a different format, like a drag and drop thing or like a pull down thing of like that. If it's displayed in different ways that you haven't seen yet, like I have chronic like complex PTSD, so it's like adjusting to something new that I've never seen before. It takes me a lot of time. But then there's also my dyslexia and then my ADHD, which encompasses anxiety, to kind of just navigate this whole space. But the thing that I was going to get back to before, it's like, imagine learning Chinese for the first time and then getting an hour extra to learn it. It's like, do you think that would help?
Yeah, exactly. No, it wouldn't help me.
Like, it's like, this is what neurodivergent people and students have to face on a daily basis. Not all of them, because we all have different experiences and our brains work in different ways. But like, that's an example of like how a dyslexic person functions sometimes.
So can I just say, right, I was in a panel, a few months ago now, and someone goes, hey, is it true that if you read a book more than once, you will then understand it perfectly? And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, man, I could read the book a million times and I still wouldn't get it. And then one of the people on the panel said, yes, that's correct. And I'm like, what? What the hell? You know what I mean? And this is the type of information people are putting out there.
There's some really intelligent people. Memorization isn't a form of intelligence. I got to set that straight. And that's how education systems, I guess, view intelligence. Like the better your grades or the better at rote learning you are, like the better your grades will be. And it's like, well, that's not the case. Like memorization isn't a form of intelligence. Critical thinking and critical analysis and like emotional intelligence and like deconstructing something and putting it back together, I think that's a form of intelligence. But like, what were you saying before? I've forgotten. It's like reading a book. Like there's some people that will just memorize it and it's like that. It's like it's in their brain. There's a lot of autistic people who have a photographic memory. And like autism is a spectrum as well as any neurodivergence. So it's like there's highly functional and there's highly dysfunctional and there's certain levels of autism. But like not many people, I think, could read a book and then just memorize it or understand it fully after. Like potentially if you read a page and then wrote notes and then keep reading a page and writing notes, like there's different processes, methodologies people use. But yeah, that's a very like vague answer that person gave because like you can't just say that like.
I know. Well, that was the thing. I was so puzzled and I was ready. No, but that was the other thing. Then someone else said, oh, can I second that? And they're like, yeah, I second that. And I was ready to just turn around and go, hey, look, by the way, I was about to shut them down, but the whole event stopped at that point. So I didn't get to actually like chime in my 2 cents, which is like,
like some people say that reading a book upside down helps you memorize things, but it's like, is that an actual fact? Or it's like, and if research does suggest that, it's like, what was their like population of people within the study? Were they neurotypical? Were they like, and who were the people in this podcast like, or that you were speaking with? Like, were they neurotypical? Were they like highly like photographic autistic people? It's like, you can't just memorize things. It's like,
have you ever read a book upside down before?
I have tried. It didn't last me that long because I was just like, I couldn't pay attention. Like I was just, you know, when you look upside down and everything just looks funny and you just kind of try to make sense of things. I was looking at that more in the book and it was just like.
Actually, just thinking about this is a bit off topic. Have you ever, like, I don't know, laid on a bed and your mate or something's been sitting there and then you look at their, like, the top of their chin and they look like a person? Have you ever seen like that?
Those little, like, hand kind of people.
Yeah. Like that's. Anyway, man, let's move on with the podcast. But no. It is interesting, I think, that, like, sometimes the wrong information's getting out there, and there may be some information that's coming out, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. Sort of that's why universal design is probably such an important thing. So, you know, with that being said, oh, hang on, I think I skipped one there. So why accommodations alone aren't enough? Why do you think that's the case?
I said this the other day and someone kind of pulled me up on it. I think, like, we have equitable learning services at UNSW, and they're great. They give us accommodations. They, like, advocate on our behalf. Like, they.
Can I ask what type of accommodations they give you, out of curiosity?
It varies from everybody's specific needs. Like, for example, another accommodation I have besides, like, an hour for every hour for an hour. Some people get, like, 15 minutes for every hour, or, like, 30 minutes. It depends how much you ask for, how much, like, your doctor, like, says in the letter that you've got to give them, because, like, every diagnosis you get, like, then can determine the accommodation you get as well. So it's like you have to kind of state your diagnosis and then state the accommodation you need. But this is the thing that grinds my gears. I'm not going to swear because I could get very frustrated. It's like students at any level coming fresh out of high school, if they're studying again for the third or fourth time, if they're coming into university as a mature age student like myself, it's like you're expected to know what you need before you need it. And it's like, how can you know what you're going to need before you even start one course, let alone three if you're studying at UNSW, which we're trimesters? And it's like each course is different, let alone, like, studying three courses at the same time. And then, like, each time you go up a year, it's like things are going to get more complex. And it's like every time you need a new accommodation, you need a new letter or a new diagnosis or something, which costs people money. So it's like there's so many barriers to entry.
So you can't get these accommodations without those letters. Is that correct?
You can't. They're trying to find ways of, like, helping students in the interim, like, because letters may take time. So if they state that, like, I've spoken to my GP, I'm getting psychiatrists kind of to confirm these things, I'll have something in, like, 3 months. They might give you certain accommodations to kind of help until you get it. But majority of the time, to my understanding, you need, like, professional.
And is that all universities that you know of, out of curiosity?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know a university that wouldn't do it without one.
Because, like, man, I got, like, diagnosed with dyslexia when I was, like, 10. I'm, like, 42 now. Be stuffed if I knew where the bloody diagnosis was.
Or, like, would your GP can do this as well, which is great.
Yeah, I could speak to them, but, like, they wouldn't have it. But they wouldn't have a clue that I have told them, but, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just seems weird. It's just, you're just getting a note.
Like, another accommodation I have is like I've managed kitchens, I've managed research projects, but, like, in a lab where there's so many things going on at once, and there's, like, say, like, 8 lab demonstrators with, like, each group of, like, 12 students per, like, 8 lab demonstrators. There's, like, 8 different people speaking at one time, and, like, there's a lot going on. So, like, I used to have, like, a lab assistant kind of sit next to me and, like, pay attention and pick up on things that I kind of missed. Because let's say, like, if you use jargon that I've never heard this word before, or, like, I'm trying to understand what's been said, that could take me a good 10, 20 minutes. And if my brain's not focusing on that, what I need to learn from my experiment that I've got to do in my lab because I study science, it's like I've just missed out on a whole heap of shit that I need to know for these experiments. So it's like I used to have someone there like listening for me and helping me like regulate my emotions, because sometimes like, I would get anxious as fuck. And it's I need someone to like either tell me like let's go outside and go for a walk and then bring me back in. But it's like I need my hand held in a lab environment, yet like I can manage projects and stuff. It's like, but you put me in this environment which I'm not used to, and it's like 3 to 4 hours long, and you get like potentially a 10-minute break. It's like it's a lot to put on a student, especially if they've got like sensory overload because there's bright lights, there's things going on. It's so many different types of accommodations students can get, but a lot of students don't know what they can get, so they don't know what to ask for. And I think that this is an issue. And I'm a part of this Students with Disabilities Leadership Collective, and we're trying to kind of collate what policies each university has, and then I guess what like we're going to try to standardize a list of like comprehensive accommodations that students may be able to ask for, so students know like what they may be able to get before they enter the system, because it's like it's such a hassle trying to get a new accommodation added in if you're like halfway through your course and you've got like no time on your hands whatsoever. Because like I can't speak for neurotypical students, but students that I do know, like they're behind all the time. But it's like if you're neurodivergent, you're behind a lot of the time and you're always catching up. So there's always something you need to do, because you'll be handing assessments in late, for example. You'll have like 3 assessments or something in 1 week. It's like it never ends, and it's just, yeah, it's a very clunky system and a very stressful system to put yourself in.
Yeah, crazy. So, talking about that, so universal design in action, what would be some practical steps for educators? So you've just spoken about how it is quite clunky. What would probably make that better or easier, do you think?
So accommodations kind of, I hate saying this, it's kind of like a Band-Aid approach. It's like the foundations aren't kind of accessible or inclusive. So let's just put an accommodation in to kind of mitigate these things, because academics aren't, say, providing transcripts for lectures, or like providing different formats for assessments to be in. Why
aren't they providing transcripts or like recordings of their sessions?
Great question. Some academics do. Some academics don't know that it's a feature on the technology software that they're using, which is just like it baffles me. But yes, like these are things that we try to get standardized, and this is where universal design for learning comes in, because like within the inclusive education toolkit I spoke about, which we've created from the Diversified project, it's like we use UDL, Universal Design for Learning, as our main framework to structure everything that we're kind of giving the educators to kind of understand how to like move forward in a more inclusive manner. And if, say, for example, like students, there's like a thing called the hidden curriculum. It's like learning how to learn, and there's so many things outside of learning that you need to understand and navigate, as well as learning your coursework. And like students don't know how they learn best, or what their like sensory kind of needs are, or like what their learning style is, or what their processing styles are, or what their communication styles are. So it's like if a student's expected to give a verbal presentation in front of a whole group of students and they're anxious, or they have dyslexia and like an ADHD potentially like myself, it's like I can think, but when I communicate, it doesn't come out the same. And it's like if I've got anxiety blocking my neural pathways, getting in the way of like my execution for communicating, it's like that's an issue for me. So instead of getting students to like gain those confidence skills of presenting in a classroom, why don't you just let them do a recording of themselves doing it and their own comfort? It's like it's just changing being more flexible in terms of like how you provide students, I guess, more flexible learning environments, or more flexible like assessment types. Like universal design for learning kind of encompasses like 3 different things. So the first one is multiple means of representation. So like presenting information in different ways, like I said before, like text, audio, video, or like tactile formats. The second one is about like multiple means of action and expression. So like allowing students to show what they've learned in ways that work best for them, such as like essays, videos, presentations, or even art, which kind of ties into the first
Yeah.
And the third one's like multiple means of engagement. So it's like creating options for students to stay motivated and connected, whether that's through collaborative activities, individual projects, or like flexible pacing. So for example, it's like when I'm speaking to someone, majority of the time, it's kind of polite to look in someone's eyes when you're speaking to them, like right now, like I'm looking here. But if I need to process something, I can't look into somebody's eyes because I need to think about what I'm saying, and I can't do that if I'm looking in someone's eyes. Then you apply that to a classroom setting, and it's like, well, if the student's kind of dawdling or doodling and like just drawing whilst they're listening, and the academic's like, why aren't you paying attention? It's like, I am paying attention, but I need to kind of channel my ADHD energy because my energy is always moving. So it's either going to be moving in my head and I'm going to be anxious or like overthinking or not be able to process things, or I can process things whilst my hand's moving, or I'm chewing gum, for example, but like you're not allowed gum in a lab. And like with ADHD, and I can't generalize this because not everybody's the same, but it's like we need people fidget. I've got a swizzle chair right now, and like my body's moving, but I'm trying to keep my like torso still, so I'm like not being kind of rude to people, because you're supposed to kind of stand up straight and stay still and all these things when you communicate and stuff. And it's like that's not how everybody functions. And it's just like there's so many societal kind of constructs and ways of doing things that are formal and just not how everybody works. And it's just like things need to change and things need to be more adaptable and flexible.
And would you sort of find that, like, I think the biggest thing that I always talk about is that a lot of these changes would actually be quite simple changes. Would you say that as well?
100%. Like, say, for example, like providing students lecture recordings ahead of time. Like some courses are fully online, so it's like you just get lecture recordings and they're not live. But in some cases, it's like you don't get access to lecture recordings like a week before or 2 weeks before. Like imagine if you were trying to get ahead of your course 2 weeks before you started the course, but you don't have access to the lecture recordings. So you can't fully understand like what you're getting yourself into.
Because it's all new information, eh? But at least if you're getting access to it early, you're like, now I know. I remember listening to that.
And I've got chronic fatigue and IBS, so it's like every day I wake up is a whole completely new day to me. I might have energy, I might feel sick, I might have brain fog. It's like I might feel great, and if I feel great, I'm going to do as much as I can in that time because I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So it's like if I can't prepare myself because the academic or the educator hasn't given me access to things before, in like I need them, like say 2 weeks before example, that might be pushing it for some academics. But if you've got lecture recordings that are a year old, you can give students access to that. And I know some academics who do give access to those last year recordings, but they put under red under the recording, it's like, disclaimer, this is last year's recording. I can't say verbatim that this is all going to be the same information, but it'll give you a heads up of what may be in the course. So it's like, I will give you access to a lecture recording or the slides in real time once I've got them, but like I don't have them right now. So this is the best I can give you. That can help students so much. And it's just like, there's so many things. Like,
sorry, have you seen that new, I think Google created it, where you can put like all your study notes, for example, into this app, and then it turns it into a podcast?
I haven't seen the podcast thing. AI is off its head right now.
Yeah, totally.
It's like I say ChatGPT is like my second brain. I honestly like I don't know how I functioned at university in life without it beforehand. So it's just like it's insane. I use it for everything. It's such a game changer. Like I went to a Microsoft hackathon like I think maybe 2 weeks ago, and one of the people from the accessibility team, they were like, you can scan in, I can't remember what meeting it was, it might be Zoom, might be Teams, whatever, like a QR code that'll give you like the closed captions in the language that is your first language.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
And I'm just like, holy fucking shit, this is so cool, and this is so like needed, because there's a lot of international students who don't have English as their first language, and they should have a basic knowledge of English, understanding. A lot of students do, some don't. And if a master's student, for example, in an art design course, I'm using this as a real life example. It's like master's students taking an art and design course, give an assessment brief, they don't know how to understand it. So they're not getting the marks they want because they don't understand what's being asked of them. But let's say like you've got that QR code that could translate things for them, or you've got like an assessment brief, which you like just upload the file if you've got ChatGPT Premium, and then just say, translate this into Mandarin, translate this into Cantonese, whatever language they speak. It's like that's just accessible education.
Yeah, totally.
And that's a form of UDL, I'd say, because if an academic can show a student like that's what they can do to use this and change this into their format, like that's giving students options, which would then like kind of lessen the accommodations the student may need. It's not going to get rid of them, but it's definitely going to help the system, and it's going to help the educator. But it blows my mind like how the education system was before. And it does give me hope because things are changing, and it's these conversations we're having now that are going to make a difference and help students advocate for themselves more, and help academics who are potentially listening to like show more interest in like UDL, and like invest in learning and understanding that students need different formats and different like ways of.
Because do you know what I was talking to someone, especially about with especially with the academics, is that like the big problem with them is that they don't have teaching backgrounds. They come from like whatever it is. And these are some of the problems that we're facing because they don't have that teaching experience.
Like, so within academia, you've got like I think usually it's 60-40. You might be like 60 researcher, 40 academic. Or you might be like 60 academic, 40 research. Or you might be 80 academic, 20 research. Or you might be full academic or full research. It's like there's so many variations of like the type of academic you have. And if you're more education focused, you're going to have that basic understanding. Hopefully you're going to have that basic understanding. But if you're more research focused, like you don't have all that. You didn't study education as a background, or you may have taken a few courses to get through your PhD to become a professor or something like that, or a lecturer, but it's like you don't have those foundational skills. Some universities have like, I think we've got the FALT program, which teaches academics kind of basic, accessible and inclusive kind of ways of teaching. It needs to be probably mandatory, but then I kind of second guess myself when I say that, because something that's mandatory, it's like it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. If it's like if they're told they have to do this and they're not interested, so it's like I was going to say something before. What were we speaking about?
We're talking about the academics in one ear, out the other. It shouldn't be mandatory.
Another, so I'm actually a neurodiversity consultant for my school, which is the School of like Biotechnology and Biotechnological and Biomolecular Sciences. My major is molecular biology, and within my school of BABS, I'm going to call it for short, I'm a neurodiversity consultant, so I'm auditing a course in terms of its accessibility. And we have like, say, 24 different lectures within one course, which is 10 weeks. And then you've got like 8 different lecturers giving those lectures, and each lecture is structured differently. The layout's different. There should be standard things which UDL kind of emphasizes. So like say each lecture should have set of lecture slides should have learning outcomes. So a student knows like what they should be focusing on, and those learning outcomes should be linked to the learning like slides. But that's
so it's sort of like a training plan, like a teaching plan, correct? So you'll be starting with this, it then goes into this, it then goes into this, correct?
What I'm doing is I'm mainly focusing on like the guest lecturers who come in, and majority of the time they're not getting paid. They're experts in industry. They have no education. Potentially, I can't speak for all of them, either no education experience or like minimal education experience. So some of them, for example, have like 90 slides for an hour, where like I'd say the standard would be 30 or 40 would be ideal, because that's like 2 minutes on each slide. If you've got 90 slides divided by, well, it'll be like 50 or 55 minutes, because you start a lecture at like 5 past, not on the dot. So it's like, say 55 minutes, like 90 divided by 55, that's like less than a minute a slide. And it's like, if you've got a whole slide of information that's just text, it's like
information overload.
I've seen a slide that's literally a full black background. It's like full of text. There's text at the start that's like highlighted in red. The second one's highlighted in yellow, and the third one's highlighted in purple. And I'm just like, if a student didn't have the lecturer kind of speaking towards this, how do they know where to start and what's the important information? Because everything is highlighted. It's like, that's not accessible. And that's very overwhelming for any student, let alone a neurodivergent one. So it's like what I'm trying to do is create like within the limited time that I've been given for this role, it's like create like a set of must-have guidelines that guest lecturers or like non-education focused academics can use to say like I should have X, Y, Z in this order potentially. If it's not in the same order, at least you've got them in any way you want, but like they're in there. And I'm trying to create like an empty shell of like, have a title slide, have this slide, have that. So I'll have like a set of written guidelines, and then I'll have like an empty shell, which like they should know that like you've got the visual version, then you've got like the written version of like a standard thing that you should have, because universities don't have this. Some might. We might have it within UNSW, but within our school of Babs, we don't have that. And like, we're trying to lead the way in accessibility ways. So it's like, it's these things that if you're using universal design for learning more and academics had more of an understanding and it was embedded in the university, and accessibility and inclusion were the foundations of everything that happens in a university, which it should. And I strongly like stand by that. It's like things would be so much different.
Yeah, totally. Actually, that actually works well into the next question here. So, future-proofing education. So, the role of UDL in emerging learning environments. So, I think that rolls in perfectly. So, if we have standards or procedures in place, it should make it easier for everyone, correct?
It should. I think this is where AI comes back into the picture. Because I think things like ChatGPT are game changers, as I said before, because if you're in a lecture and you can't ask your lecturer a question because there's no time, or they say like questions at the end, or you've got anxiety and you can't ask the question because you literally can't, you've got anxiety, it's debilitating you don't have the confidence to either speak it out aloud, which 99% of the students don't have their cameras on and they don't speak. They just their cameras off. They may put questions in the chat. But it's like if a student doesn't have the confidence even to put a question in the chat, it's like that's an issue. And I think that
so a majority of the lectures are all done online these days. Is that correct?
Lectures predominantly, yes. It varies from university to university. Like tutorials, lectures might be recorded or they might be live, and tutorials predominantly would be live, recorded, or in person. Labs within my school have they're in person, and you can't do them online. They are trying to look at like ways of having like AI or virtual VR simulation kind of things for labs to pass certain things, because you have to do certain experiments and stuff and learn certain techniques and stuff like that. But coming back to AI, it's like you've got 24/7 real-time feedback tutor at your fingertips like that when you've got AI in your pocket, on your mobile, on your Mac, on your PC, whatever. And you've got like personalized learning, because let's say if an academic uses jargon, you can literally, and some universities don't like you doing this, but you can screenshot a lecture slide, for example, and then put that in there and say, simplify this for me. Use an analogy to make this more simpler for me to understand. Because let's say if you've never done a biology course before and you have no biology foundation, it's like you need a foundation to learn and build from. So if you can use an analogy that's in a non-biological terms, and then you can translate that to a biological terms, and then you can start your foundation, you're going to learn and understand things better. But if the lecturer is not speaking in the language that you understand, like biology jargon, for example, and each science kind of has different jargon, different words for the same thing, which is so confusing. And it's like, if AI can translate that or break it down, simplify it, give you like flashcards, it can do everything you need it to, I think, now.
But unis frown against that.
For note-taking and stuff, I think it's fine. For like adding in a lecture slide to a thing like ChatGPT, they don't like, because of the IP issues, because it's there.
Okay, yeah, I see.
So like they're really strict on that stuff. We do have access to Microsoft Copilot, the like basic version at UNSW, which is like a closed system. So like once you ask it a question, it will just delete it because it's not saved, which is saving the IP things. But like you could still say, like you could put like your own made lecture note document into ChatGPT and say, I need to create a set of 30 exam style advanced multiple choice questions for me to pre-practice my exam, like as practice questions from my notes. Make sure you hit like certain points. Give me a rationale behind why the answer is the answer, and then why the other choices you've given me aren't right, so I can learn as much as I can before I take this exam. You don't get that from an academic. Like it's things students can do to use AI to their advantage. Create a set of questions, create flashcards.
Have you found that helpful for you?
100%. Like even if I've got questions that I've generated myself, I'm like, what questions have I missed here that may be asked in a final exam? And majority of the time it picks up something that you're like, I actually didn't think about that. And it's just like, it's just opening up the never-ending possibilities of like what type of question could be asked in an exam, because like majority of the time it's something that's so like niche from what's been said, or it's like something little's been said and they've gone on a tangent that's not kind of course related or in the material, but like they've integrated it somehow, and that question's just throws students off. But if AI can give them that like foresight or that insight into like what potentially might be asked, it's like it's so valuable.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. But we are getting close to the end now. So building inclusive universities, what's the intersection of policy, practice, and culture?
As I said before, like policies, universities, any education system needs to have, I feel very strongly that like accessibility and inclusion need to be like the underpinning of everything that's been done, past and future. Like we have AI projects going on at the moment at UNSW that like like I sit in their like demo kind of things when they're like showcasing it for the first time, their beta versions, and I'm like, have you looked at the accessibility aspects of any of this? And they're not even thinking about it. I'm just like, as an accessibility consultant or like specialist, I'd say, because I know a lot about it, it's like, why haven't you looked at this yet? It's like, just because you're like centralizing resources from a university into one space, it's like, how do you know that the student knows how to go through that process in the first place? Like, how do you know that process is accessible to the student? Just because you're guiding them there doesn't mean they're not going to know how to use it. It's like accessibility and inclusion needs to be the foundation of everything that's been done and that's being done and has been done, like is happening currently. Because when that is, it's like universities are always going on about students' well-being and belonging, but it's like, how can you belong if an environment isn't inclusive to your identity and how you process and navigate and function in life? And how can you feel like you belong if things aren't accessible to you in the first place? It's like accessibility and inclusion, when they're done right, and UDL is a very good starting point, it's like they can create strong foundations that then funnel into these well-being and belonging things that the universities really prioritize and they put a lot of money for, but I don't think they're doing them well enough because the accessibility and inclusion is the underpinning, and they're not at that. They're just looking at it through a neurotypical, more professional lens, and it's like, well, you need students a part of this. You need the lower SES students. You need these disability students. You need the students who are really struggling and who really don't have that sense of belonging yet at university because they don't know how to access things, for example. You need them a part of the conversation. So I think you need lived experience and you need accessibility and inclusion as the foundations of things.
Yeah.
In any part of society, I think, really. Yeah, I'm a strong advocate for that.
No. Yeah, no, that's good. No, and it's true. I think that, so I go to a lot of like tech pitch nights and stuff like that, and people are talking. I tell you what, man, it feels like everyone's trying to start a HR program. Like everyone I know is trying to build a HR program, right? And a lot of the time, they're not even thinking about accessibility and all of that. It's like, our program will do this, and if it shows this, that means that the person's not performing. And I'm like, well, hang on. Maybe that means that the person's struggling with something. Have you looked at it from that perspective before? So little things like that there, but pretty crazy stuff. But look, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on today. We've pretty much gotten to the end there today. If someone wants to connect with you and the work that you're doing, what's the best place to check you out at?
As I said before, my name's Aaron St. James. I think it was on the screen before, so that's like, oh yeah, it is AARON.
I'll put it into. Hang on, I'll put it onto the. I'll put it up on the screen here. Hang on, mate. Paste, and then I'll add it. There we go. Do you want to spell it out for the people listening?
Yep. So AARON SAINT-JAMES. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on social media, Instagram and Facebook. I've also got a link tree because I provide like consultancy services, and if you can't find me, reach out to Will and we'll just pass on my details. But
no, that's no problem.
I've got a lot on my plate, but if you've got any questions or you need any advice, definitely just hit me up because I'm so passionate about changing education, higher education in particular, and making systems more functional and more accessible for everyone, because when you use UDL, it's like it caters for everyone, not the majority. And it's like, that's how society and things should be. So, yeah.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, look, thanks so much for coming on. Awesome chat there, like always. You got much planned for over the Christmas period, mate?
My family's coming from Tassie actually, so I'm going to have a bit of time off and spend it with them. So that's going to be really nice.
Oh, well, will you still be in Sydney?
Yeah, I'll still be in Sydney.
Oh, nice, man. So you won't be. Whereabouts do you live again?
St. Peter's.
St. Peter's. So you won't be hanging around St. Peter's?
I'm actually going to be on the Central Coast, but I will be.
Oh, you're going up there?
Yeah. My sister's friends live there, so we're going to be staying at their place and probably at the beach. Hopefully, it's a hot summer like last year. Was it? I think it was hot last year. I don't know. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think it was. Oh, man. Nothing much on Christmas, but I think my sister-in-law and her new boyfriend from Ireland are coming down to Sydney for a few days. So I was going to say, if you were free, we would have come and caught up with you, but I think you might be a bit busy, my friend.
Well, hit me up anyway, and I'll see if I can make some time because I'd love to see it.
Totally, man. Totally. Awesome, man. Awesome. But thank you so much for coming on today. It's always a pleasure when we're chatting. Definitely a topic that I want to talk more about in the future. So I'd say this is only the beginning. But look, for all of our listeners who already haven't done so, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media pages. My name's Will, and this is Neurodivergent Mates. Till next time.